Welcome to Hauntcore Vault. If you are ready for horror tales, you are in the right place. If you are new, please subscribe to the channel. I'd love to know where are you from and what time you are watching. Let's begin.
The story I'm about to tell was told to me by one of my best friends. Last year, he went to Pennsylvania as an au pair, and his host parents lived in the large colonial house. I hope it's the right translation. That's how we call this kind of houses here in Italy. One day, he had to do the laundry, but he was home alone with the little boy he was supposed to take care of, and decided to take the kid in the basement with him so he could do both things. While he was washing his clothes, he heard the child talking to himself. He thought he was talking to him, so he went near the boy and asked what he was saying. He replied that he wasn't talking to him, but to his grandma. My friend wasn't frightened, because he is a rational person, so he thought the child was just joking or that maybe he only had an imaginary friend. He went back to the washing machine room, and the kid continued to talk sitting in the corner. Nothing else happened for days, but like a couple of months later, my friend had to do the laundry again, and he was home alone with the little boy. So they went to the basement again, and the same thing happened. The child started talking in the same corner of the room and kept saying he was talking to his grandma. This time, my friend was a bit worried, mostly about the child being mad or something, so he told what happened to his parents. They immediately called a psychic, without saying her anything specific about where all this happened and who the child saw. As soon as the psychic came in the house, she went directly to the basement and stared at the same corner where the little boy used to sit and talk by himself. She said that she could feel something bad happened there, and she suggested to the parents to search the archives if something had happened in the house before they bought it. They found out that the previous owners were an old couple and that the man killed his wife. They found her body in a corner in the basement. So probably the boy, who had never met his grandma, saw an old lady and immediately thought she was his grandmother.
When I was 12, I'm 15 now, I made the stupid decision of playing the Charlie challenge. It started out innocently with me just asking questions like, does X have a crush on me? And am I going to die a virgin? All that stupidity. But at the time, I didn't know that you had to burn the paper after you finished. So I just threw it away like an idiot. And that's where things got interesting. 2 days later, a lot of roaches started showing up at our house, which was pretty strange, considering that we live in a pretty cold area and we basically never get roaches. That night, when I was going to sleep after me and Mom were done praying, we are a religious family, I remember seeing figures around the house. But I really didn't pay attention because I didn't have my glasses on, so I just thought that it was my eyes just fucking with me. So I go to bed, and I start seeing those figures again, like just big black shadows. My room was pretty dark since I didn't have any windows, but this time it felt a little out of the ordinary. 5 minutes go by, and I don't see anything anymore, so I just fall asleep and have the worst nightmare of my life that I still remember to this day. It was just a really black face with red eyes just staring at me. Just imagine a pitch black face and bright red eyes. That must have gone on for like 2 hours, or at least it felt like it. And the dream switched. I remember just seeing like a creepy version of my house full of roaches and me sleeping right there in my own bed. I was then woken up by a poster falling in my room. It made a decently loud noise, and I just rushed to my mom's room crying. She's a single parent. I storm in and tell Mom what happened. She comforts me and tells me it's just a bad dream, and she lets me sleep next to her. A few days go by without anything happening, and I basically get over it. Then it happened again. It was a Friday night after a long day at school and football training, soccer for all you Americans, and I just dropped dead into my bed exhausted without praying or brushing my teeth. A few hours of sleep go by, and I remember something really cold on my back. I'm a chest sleeper. It felt like someone got ice out of the freezer and just dropped it on my back. Nothing happens for another 30 minutes, and suddenly I hear the TV on. At first, I just ignored it because I thought it was my brain playing tricks on me. But then I realized that the TV is actually on. I go over and check, but no one is there. At this point, I started to freak out, so I just turned off the TV and rushed to my room. I lay down and fall asleep. But I remember waking up in my mom's bed. I asked her if she moved me, but she said no. I started to freak out because I remember about the paper I didn't burn, but I didn't tell Mom because I didn't want her to freak out. Nothing else has happened since, apart from me having a cross in my room and a mini statue of the Virgin Mary. Sorry for bad grammar or spelling. English isn't my first language. I went to university in South Africa, and I lived in a flat apartment that was next to a hotel, the Radisson, actually. My light would every now and then switch itself on and off, which I figured was an electrical failure. But the creepiest would be if I left the room for a few minutes and came back to find the light on or off, like even the switch would be pushed down. I used to sleep with my curtains open. One day, I woke up to go to the bathroom. It was very late, like 3 a.m. My room was across the restaurant. I saw a man walking across the restaurant in a tux, and I was like, odd. There weren't usually any people up there at night. I come back from the bathroom, and I see him walk past again, in the same direction. At this point, I feel a little uneasy. I scooch closer to the window. Please note I'm in the dark while the restaurant lights are on, so I can see this person, but they shouldn't be able to see me. The person again passes by headed in the same direction, and now I'm really creeped out because I don't see them when they come back. It's as if there are many people who look exactly the same who are passing by the same spot. Anyway, the third time around, he stops, turns, and cups his hands around his eyes while looking through the window, like he's looking right at me. I ducked, crawled out of my room, and spent the night in the living room. Lol. I won't lie and say I'm a skeptic, but I'm definitely like an ignorer. Like I never spoke about this while I lived in the place because that would make it real, but after I left, I was like, that place might have been haunted, if hauntings are a thing.
I've had a good amount of paranormal instances, but the one that affected me the most was that I would always see this man everywhere when I was growing up. And I mean like the grocery store, at school, in my house, etc. I even saw him when my family and I moved overseas. He is always dressed in the same clothes and would never get too close, and he was never there for too long either. It was never creepy. It was just like he was checking in, and as I got older, I saw him less and less. By the time I was 16, I hadn't seen him for a while, and during this time, my father reconnected with his biological father's side of the family, so my grandpa's family. When my dad was 2, his mom left his father because he was mildly abusive and suffered a lot from the war, PTSD, addiction, etc. And since my grandmother moved away, she lost all contact with her former in-laws, which is why my dad never really knew them. My dad met his father when he was 18, after my grandfather had sobered up and was actually an AA sponsor, and ended up devoting the rest of his life to helping other veterans. Unfortunately, my father was not over what happened with his mother, or how he treated his mother, and just wasn't ready to make a relationship with him. Additionally, in his eyes, he already had a dad, which was his stepdad, and the man who raised him. My grandfather would die a year later from organ failure. Jumping back to when I was 16, my father contacted my woman, who claimed to be his cousin. She explained that her mother was my dad's aunt and had been looking for him and his siblings for years. They all talked for months on the phone, and during the summer before my junior year in high school, my dad and I took a trip to visit his whole extended family. During this time, we could visit my grandfather's grave, get to know what he was like post-recovery, and reconnect with a family my dad didn't know was looking for him. Their instant connection was so beautiful, and since that year, we have all gone on holidays together, spent Thanksgiving and Christmas together, and seen each other as much as possible. But that isn't really the point of this story. The point is that when we were visiting his family, we started going through photo albums, and before this time, I had never seen what my grandfather looked like. So you can imagine my surprise when the man I saw for my entire life was the man I now call Grandpa.
When I was pregnant with my second child, I would have insanely vivid dreams, usually just random things. But one night, I dreamed about what I'd come to know as the Hat Man. I'll give a little background for context in the dream. My friend Anna recently moved to a different home, and her friend, Charlotte, moved into the old one. Me and Charlotte were only acquaintances, but since Anna had lived in the home, I was very familiar with it. In my dream, I was walking up to the house with my husband and my oldest daughter. I was coming to babysit for Charlotte. It was super foggy and dark, with no other houses around it, nothing but a man sitting outside of the fence. He had his back turned to us, just staring at the house as he sat in a wheelchair. The feeling I had was extremely uneasy, and something about the man was just off. As we approached, I got the sense that this man wanted to get into the house, but couldn't. He appeared to be middle-aged. Nothing stood out besides the wheelchair and his hat. It was a hat you'd see in a show like Peaky Blinders. The closer I got, the more I somehow knew that this was not a good person. In fact, he was not a person at all, but something pretending to be one, and the wheelchair was only a guise for him to seem like he was not of any threat. Don't ask me how I knew all this, it's just dream logic, I guess. I said to my husband as we came up beside him, almost passing the entrance to the gate, "Don't look at him, don't talk to him." For whatever reason, I looked at his face then, and he started to change. I can't really describe what he became, but as it grew and morphed, I could sense his anger fuming as he became this distorted, towering thing. We quickly rushed past him and into the house. He had disappeared. When I got into the house, nothing was right. It was abandoned and dilapidated, save for a worn kitchen table with 3 little girls, all in the same onesie. I could see 2 were twins and 1 slightly older. Now, Charlotte only has 1 son and a toddler girl, and I have never babysat for her or met her children. I told Anna about the dream a few days later. I always tell people my dreams. I think they're entertaining and weird, and I'm sure anyone who has the misfortune of hearing about them probably just thinks the latter. She agreed it was a weird dream and said Charlotte had been talking about her son complaining of a ghost or something in his closet at night, scaring him. She told Charlotte about my dream, and shortly after, she reached out to me privately, and what she said sent shivers down my spine. Before her daughter was born, she had a miscarriage, twins, and her son had been intermittently telling her about some ghost that came out of his closet at night with a weird hat on. She also said she had been extremely depressed and feeling very off lately. Charlotte asked if I had ever heard of the Hat Man, but I never had. And just as well, the hat in my dream wasn't the same type as the one her son described when he talked about the thing that was in his room at night. I told her all the details in my dream, and we ended our convo agreeing it was very strange. I didn't talk to her again after that. Honestly, I had forgotten about all of it since I was so busy and tired from the C-section and adjusting to a new baby. My pregnancy was hard, and postpartum was harder. I immediately had severe PPD, and honestly, my brain went to some scary places during that time. I don't want to get into that part much, but I'm really lucky to still be here now writing this. One day, a few months after I had my second daughter, I laid down on the couch to sleep while the baby sleeps. I was in some weird half-dream, half-awake state when I heard and felt someone come to the edge of the couch, standing behind where my head was. I got the feeling it was a man, and he was frightened. Just as fast as he appeared, he disappeared, and someone, rather something, was left standing behind him. The sense of dread I felt through my entire body was so intense. I felt heat burning through my body just before I jerked awake. As I opened my eyes, jolted upright and turning to face what was behind me, I caught a strange glimpse. It was something like a fleeting shadow, just a black, outline shadow type thing. A tall man wearing a wide-brimmed hat. Then, in a blink, he vanished. What the hell did I just see? What the hell just happened? I don't even know why I said anything. It just came out of me. Why? And in a quiet, retreating voice that was not my own, but unmistakably a man's, I hear, "Because you invited me in." After the initial shock and questioning my sanity, I realized that whatever that thing was, it was the very same energy I had felt from the man in the wheelchair in my dream months before. I'm not one to believe in shit like this, and quite honestly, it was the last thing I was thinking about since I was so busy and tired from the C-section and adjusting to a new baby. I Googled the description of what I saw and scrolled through images. There it was, the dark silhouette wearing the same hat with the caption, "The Hat Man." I read so many articles trying to piece together this strange experience that made no logical sense.
When I was 20, I moved into a house with my then-girlfriend. It was a 3-bedroom rental in a decent part of town and really, really cheap. The only downside was the landlord didn't live in my state and didn't speak English, so repairs took time. Thanks to a series of events involving my GF's job making her come into work and her brother being a flake, I ended up moving in everything by myself. 10 minutes into the move, I had the first encounter. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a black dog looking up the stairs at me. I thought I was hallucinating from exhaustion, but then my dog, a large German Shepherd mix who was upstairs with me, walked over to the stairs and started growling, looking straight at it. The dog casually walked away. I ran downstairs and looked everywhere, but couldn't find it. We both saw the dog a few more times and had a few other weird sights, sounds, and experiences in the house, but there was one that was beyond a doubt a paranormal experience. It was what caused us to move out. Our master bedroom was upstairs. It was a particularly hot summer and the old AC wasn't cooling upstairs very efficiently, so we slept in a bedroom on the main level that I was using as my computer room guest bedroom. This room always had a weird vibe to it, and we had noticed that our dog, who typically followed us everywhere, would not go in. Instead, he would lay down in front of the doorway and wait for us. He was a little strange at times, so we wrote it off as that. At some point in the middle of the night, I woke up being violently shaken. As I came to, I could feel a hand firmly holding my arm and shaking me back and forth. Thinking the house was on fire and my GF was trying to wake me, I jumped up and turned around to get out of bed. That put me face to face with what a lot of people would call a shadow person. It was a black mass, vaguely in the shape of a human, but by the light of the streetlight outside of the window, I could clearly see it. I could feel freezing cold air pouring off of it. Thinking I was dreaming and my GF was still trying to wake me, I turned around only to see her still in the bed, still sound asleep. I turned back around and the shadow was still there.
Now, wide awake and full of adrenaline, I withdrew back away from it. After having sufficiently scared the bejesus out of me, the shadow slowly turned away from me, lumbered towards my door, and out into the hallway. My dog, who was sleeping in the hall, woke up and skittered backwards into the bedroom towards me, terrified. I sat on the bed and collected myself before jumping back out of the bed and going to the hall. I turned the light on, and of course, it was gone. I didn't wake my girlfriend up, but I also didn't sleep until the sun came back up. I told my GF about it the next day. We called the landlord and told her that we were moving out. I told her the house was haunted and we were not staying after the current month. She seemed to understand and didn't protest it at all. While visiting a Titanic museum, my friend and I were excited to see pieces of White Star Line first-class china, silverware, and other artifacts that had been brought up from the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. There was velvet roping around an authentic Titanic deck chair with a model in period costume reclining. We joked with the woman while shuffling past with our group that this job must be delightful. Being able to watch people all day while seated, lounging, struck us as rather ideal. She just smiled. At the end of our tour, most people were filtering out of the museum. We stopped and jokingly asked our guide how to land such a great job, repeating what we'd said to the woman on the deck chair. He began to laugh. He said, "Oh, you saw Miriam. She's not always here, but we welcome her any time, honey." We asked how much that would pay, and he laughed again. "Miriam is our name for our ghost," he said. And then, "You don't think we'd let just anyone sit in our Titanic deck chair, do you?" We could hardly eat lunch and realized we'd both just encountered spirit. So I've always been sensitive to the paranormal. My mom has told me strange stories about when I was a kid and the things I would claim to have seen. Apparently, these were things a 6-year-old wouldn't really know about. Anyways, fast forwards about 14 years and I'm living with my grandparents. They purchased a home in a subdivision and picked a plot of land to have it built on, so they were the first and only people living in this home. So I have no explanation as to what I've experienced. But I would see shadows and little glowing balls of light here and there. Nothing too creepy. Except the hallway. They had an L-shaped hallway, and my bedroom was at the end of the hallway. So if you take an L and turn it 90 degrees clockwise, my bedroom would be where the top of the L would be, and the kitchen/dining room/sitting room would be at the opposite end. So to get to my bedroom, I would have to turn a corner and go to the end of the hallway. Right after turning the corner, we would feel a sense of dread, like something was right behind you, about to snatch you up. But once you crossed the threshold to your bedroom, the feeling went away. This happened every time, day or night. Then there was one night myself, my grandmother, and my husband were watching TV. Just some comedy movie, I don't remember. Anyways, the den/computer room doors were in the living room. They were double doors and opened up wide. While we were watching the movie, we heard children laughing. The only child in the home was my 1-year-old, and she was sleeping on the couch next to my husband. So I got up and opened the den doors, expecting to see my grandpa on the computer watching some videos. The lights were off, and there was nobody there. We shrugged it off, finished our movie, and went to bed. The next morning, we were all in the kitchen talking about the previous night, and my brother and his GF walked in. They asked what we were talking about, so I told them about the children laughing. They both turned pale and looked at each other. Turns out, they had a Ouija board and were playing with it that previous afternoon. They started to hear children laughing outside their bedroom and quickly said goodbye and then put the board in the den. I told them to burn it, and we never heard the laughing again.